you're not willing to risk the unusual, you will have to settle for the ordinary. Hello and welcome to Season 2, Episode 7 of our podcast series, the podcast that inspires and educates through the sharing of real-life experiences. I am SHEILA, your host, and with me today is guest Wendy Baker, joining in remotely. Wendy is a successful British designer. She was the design director for Wallis Shop, an international expert on interior design and founder of Shoestring Books. She has published several best-selling titles, and her books are used for teaching in colleges and universities in both UK and the US. She opened her first shop, Harriet, decades ago in London, and her second one on Bond Street, where she designed clothes for many celebrities. She also had concessions in major departmental shops such as Harrods, Saks, Neiman Marcus, just to mention a few. Wendy will be sharing with us today her experience partying with the Queen's sister, Princess Margaret, dancing with the Beatles, amongst others. This episode promises to be very inspiring. Hello, Stay Wendy, tuned. And welcome to Podcast with Sheila.
Hello.
What is your favorite quote?
So work and work harder.
Great.
That's my own quote. It's nobody else.
Great. Work and work harder. Great. Take us through your life as a child.
Great as well. Unfortunately, I was born an awful long time ago, and I was born with the bombs dropping around me, and I was a very frightened child with a big stutter, very plain, very frightened all the time, it was life just surviving, really. We didn't have a lot of food or anything, and it was just my mother and I, and we spent most of our time under the stairs. Yes, it was very tough in London during the war. So that was the start of my life. I think it toughened me up, although I perhaps didn't know that at the time.
Great. Share with us your business journey. How did it all start? What were the challenges and what were your successes?
Well, the challenges were the fact that I wasn't very bright. I didn't go to any. I went to really good schools. I went to lots of convents. I decided to become a nun at one point, and then decided that perhaps maybe I'd rather make money. So I then started to start little businesses at school by, selling hairbrushes and things like that for people to brush their hair, and I charged a penny for that. And I started to make money like that, and then I realized that I really loved business. And when I left school, my mother sent me to a polytechnic to learn about she wanted me to be a secretary so that I would marry the boss. That was the idea. Go to school, learn shorthand typing, marry the boss. I was determined, one, not to marry, two, most certainly not the boss. And I learned a lot from that horrid place. It was pretty rough because I'd come from really rather delicate schools, and this was a really rough school. But I survived. I got teased a lot because my manners were so good, but I learned a huge amount. I learned about business.
Great.
And I had my first job. I got sacked within 3 days because it was all about telephones, plugging telephones in, and I got in a muddle. And anyway, I got the sack. But one of the broadcasters, a very famous broadcaster in the BBC, saw potential in me. He said, "Well, you're really very pretty," and I'd never been called pretty before. We think you should go to Lucy Clayton and we'll pay for you. So all the crew from the BBC paid for me to go to Lucy Clayton to become a mannequin. I hadn't thought of that because I was terribly shy. So my mother just laughed and said, "Don't be silly." But I thought, maybe I can do that. I can do that. Maybe I can. Anyway, I became a very, very top, internationally famous mannequin, traveled the world, spent a lot of time with the Duke and Duchess of Windsor when I worked in Paris, worked with Dior and so forth. I was very, very popular because I blushed a lot and I giggled a lot, and I generally either fell off the platform or I got everything wrong. But instead of the snooty models that had their noses in the air, I was the one that always got it wrong. I always get everything wrong, but I keep working at it. And, I reckon, as I said earlier, just work and work harder. Anyway, the day that I was going to go to become a mannequin, they said, no, you can't because you're too short neck to waist. I didn't know what that meant at the time, but it was an important measurement that you weren't any good in the clothes if you hadn't got that measurement. So I got chucked out before I even start there. And I went and sat on the bench in a square in London and crying my heart out. I didn't want to go back to my mother and say I didn't even get that job, because I thought by that time, having got sacked from the first job, I couldn't even become a mannequin. I was crying, and I can remember it clearly. And somebody walked past and said, wear high heels and keep your head up high. And I thought, what a funny man. I looked up and there was a man with a great big pimple, I remember, on his nose. And he said, why are you crying? And my mother had always said, don't talk to anybody, blah, 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 the usual thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And anyway, so I told him the story, and he said, you're lucky, young lady. I'm just about to open a model agency, and you can be my very first model. And I was, and it was the most famous model agency in the world. And I became his top model. Wow. And I traveled all over the world. I was incredibly shy, but somehow I was determined. I was determined that I would do it, and I did. And at the age of 22, I'd done all that I wanted to do. I'd been in every big show that there was. I was the Windoline girl, which meant I worked for a lot of Pinewood Studios, and I worked with all the stars there. And I did all the adverts for Windoline. Wow. And people used to see me in the street, go, wipe it on, wipe it off. Anyway, did all of that. And at the age of 22, I hung my eyelashes up and said, no, I don't want to do this anymore. And at that time, I'd been making my own clothes, because I never had enough money, really, making my own clothes. And I thought, well, when I was in Paris, there was Dior Boutique. Wasn't a shop, it was a boutique.
Boutique.
Yes, boutique. And I thought, I'll open a boutique in London. And so I did. It was a little attic in Kensington, and helped by a lovely friend of mine, Dennis Norden, and he helped me build it up. And well, we had a broomstick with about 6 dresses on it, and thank God it was the time of the sack dress, so I didn't have to have a lot of experience. And we put an advert in the local paper, and I had an answer from the nuns in the local convent saying they, in between prayers, could they work for me? Oh. And so I had all the nuns sitting there working for me. We made dresses for everybody. I mean, every star that came along, all the famous I could name. You haven't got time to hear them all, but Sandy Shaw, who when she won the Eurovision Song Contest, wore one of my clothes. Julie Christie for Dr. Zhivago. Anyway, they all came to me, and it was a wonderful story. And I decided that everything was going so well that I would actually go up west, which was like in the big time. And I've got wonderful stories of my time in America. When I was selling to Bloomingdale's, they came into the showroom and they said, you don't sell to Alexander's, do you, in New York? And I said, I thought there's something wrong, there's something there funny. I went, no, having known that yesterday we had sold to them. And they said, oh, well, that's good. That now we can buy clothes from you. Anyway, they did, placed a lovely big order, and we realized that what we shouldn't have done is to sell to Alexander's. So we got on a plane, my boyfriend and I, and we went to Alexander's, and I had a pair of scissors, and I actually cut all the labels, Harriet labels, out of the clothes so that Bloomingdale's wouldn't know that we'd done it. It was sort of like a crazy time, it was the craziest. The 60s were wonderful. We danced all night, we worked all day hard, we worked our guts out. But we had so much fun. It was the most wonderful things ever happened to me. And I feel sorry for anyone that didn't live through the 60s. I wouldn't want you to be as old as me, but my goodness, you missed a wonderful time. The spirit was so great. And there we are. So that's the rag trade part. But I wasn't very intelligent. I just had to keep working. I don't know what it was, but I had to sort of challenge myself. That was the main thing, is that I had a pushy mother, and I decided, that she wanted one thing for me, and I was determined to do something else. And so bit by bit, I achieved everything I wanted to achieve including now having finally written my book with real words in it, because all my books before were sketchbooks with no words in them.
Okay. Now let's hold on to it first. I have seen a pattern in your story that caught my eye, as in your determination and your passion and not giving up. It's like it's a consistency I see as you told your story. So it's one thing that I have noticed, because you've come from a background that you actually did not study fashion, and you just found yourself doing it, and you did it to the point that you were able to design for celebrities. Let me ask you, how did you get in contact with your first celebrity, the first person you designed for? How did you get in contact with them?
There was a write-up in one of the papers, because back in those days it was very you couldn't have a wedding and wear a trouser suit. But I designed for this celebrity. She was a model girl, and I designed a dress for her which opened up into trousers. So as she walked down the aisle, but the vicar was really cross. So it actually got a lot of publicity saying, you can't have trousers in a church. But Harriet says you can. Harriet was my name at the time. Okay. Harriet says you can. And so it started from there. And what happened was that I had all the debutantes coming to me, and the mothers brought the daughters in and said, well, we'll have afternoon dresses, evening dresses, cocktail dresses. And I was going, yeah. I didn't know what I was doing, quite frankly, but I was I was making so much money, and we made it up as we went along. And that's what I've had to do, because I don't have anything I do. It's literally by just going, well, I suppose you do it this way. And then if you try hard enough, you can do it. I mean, I've never been trained for anything. I mean, that's it. But you can sort it out. I mean, I now have a publishing house. I've no idea. It's the biggest stupid business in the world, publishing, but I'm trying to sort my way through it. So literally, I think you just say, I'd like to be a, and then if you really want to do it hard enough, you can do it. You don't have to be trained. I mean, yes, if you want to be a scientist, you do, but, I just do silly things like designing.
Wow. So I know of Harrods and I've heard of Saks. How did you get your products into these shops?
You had something in London, because London was the center in the 60s and early 70s. London was the center. Paris was very, very chic, and you always Paris, but basically London was very, very trendy, and all of a sudden the Parisians and the Americans, everyone decided, oh, London is the place. So they had something called a buying agent. Actually, the main one was AMC. I don't know what it stood for, and they would send people over from all these, Neiman Marcus and so forth, people to see the collections, and then they'd buy for them, and then it would get shipped over to America. So we didn't do anything about it, just that because it went into Women's Wear Daily, which is a trade magazine. Once pictures came out about my style and that sort of thing, because I did very feminine clothes, and the photographers loved me because they were sexy. I did quite a lot of sexy clothes, and so the famous photographers like Helmut Newton and Cecil Beaton and so forth wanted always to do, to photograph my clothes. So bit by bit, of course, I became well known like that. So it became the fact that America wanted the clothes, Australia wanted them, Hong Kong wanted them, everybody wanted my clothes, I had no idea what I was doing most of the time, but anyway, it worked.
Wow. Well, this story is very, very impressive, because you had just come from a background with no tutoring or no knowledge of tailoring or fashion, and then straight away you just rise up to the peaks where everybody is desiring for your designs, and it's hit the high peaks, and everyone wants it. This is very interesting. So what was life as a fashion designer like for you in the 50s and in the 70s?
The 50s, I wasn't in the rag trade. I was still a model girl in the 50s. So I started first Harriet in the early 60s. it was very exciting because it was new ground, and because we were all aware that Paris was important, and we didn't think we were up to much, but we sort of had to go. There was the start of flower power and so forth. I had flowers always on my face. I always had flowers, drawn on my face. And so, yeah, and I had frizzy hair, bit like it is at the moment, a mess. We just, as I said earlier, we just made it up as we went along. Very few of us were trained. There was a most wonderful designer, one of my favorite designers, Ozzy Clark, and he was the most brilliant designer. But basically, most of us made it up as we went along. Yes. I mean, Mary Quant, I did a lot of work. What really upset me about Mary Quant, she's the main person in England. If you say 60s, they say, oh, Mary Quant. Okay. Well, Mary Quant used to buy her clothes from Harriet, and she would take my labels out. So whereas I was taking the labels out in Alexander's, Mary would take my labels out there. So I can only say, yes, I worked with Mary Quant, but no, she never admitted that she did. But I used to make her clothes for her. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Same with Bieber. The Bieber, I don't know again if you know.
Bieber. Yeah.
Well, my little showroom was on top of Bieber. Bieber was below me.
Okay.
But I was there first, and then all of a sudden it said someone's moving in below, and that was Bieber. Okay. I got so much shoplifting, I had to move because people used to go in the front of Bieber, go out of the back, up to me, pinch my clothes and go away. And in the end, I thought, no, I'm going to go into Margaret Street, which is the sort of, the rag trade area, like it is in New York, which is 42nd Street. No, it's not 42nd, whatever it is in New York. So that's how I went into the big time. That's how it started. It was great. It was great. We worked so hard. We really worked so hard. And there were lovely stories about if you had too much stock in those days, you could do for £200, you could do a burn up, which meant that you could phone up someone and you say, okay, Margaret Street and Great Portland Street, I'm going on holiday on Friday. And we'd go to Ibiza. I didn't do it, but there were people. You'd go to Ibiza for £29 and be away. And when you came back, oh, your stockroom had burnt down. All that stock had gone. Only cost £200.
Wow.
Like that. It was a bit shady. A few little gangsters around,
Yeah.
But, yeah. I shouldn't have said that, but I did do it.
Okay, so what can you say about the fashion trends of today in comparison to that of your prime?
Well, I can't discuss it because I think it's so different now. It really isn't. It isn't the same. It's as I said earlier. It's just trends. Today it's great big handbags for £600 and torn jeans and and 6 t-shirts and your bra straps showing and oh great. Yeah. Could you call it fashion? No, you can call it trend. You can't call it fashion. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I mean, no, it's not just in America. It's bloody well all over the world. It's just a mishmash. It will come back again, but at the moment, it's fashion that's old-fashioned. It's old-fashioned to be fashionable. You have to have a trendy thing, and I think that's sad for people like me who are designers.
Yeah.
But I've had the best of it. I've had the best time, really. I wish it was going on, and I'm absolutely thrilled that I lived through the times that I did. Very important that I did, and I wouldn't have missed it for the world.
Great. What were the other businesses you had apart from your fashion business?
Dear, when the Chinese started to come in and take the world, fashion world went completely wrong. I'd made a lot of money by that time, and I'd bought I had a lovely daughter in between all that. I had a beautiful daughter who's a very famous photographer now, and I I decided I was going to not retire. I was going to give myself a week off.
Okay.
I did. I spent a whole week. I did ironing. I did. I went shopping. I was bored to tears. I finished everything by 9 o'clock in the morning. I didn't know what housewives did, so I thought, can't do this anymore. And so my girlfriend phoned me up one day and said, "Well, would you back me in a beauty salon?" And I said, "Oh, I don't know anything about it." Anyway, I'm a businesswoman, and so I found the premises, and we opened an amazing salon in Barnes, which is a rather posh part of London. And everybody, including Vera Lynn and all, again, Joan Collins, everybody came to the salon, and you couldn't get an appointment ever. It was really, really popular.
Wow.
But I hated the business. The customers used to come up to me and say, "What about this fat?" And I go, "Oh God, and how about these blackheads?" And I go, "Oh, I can't, no, sorry." I couldn't deal with it. No, I'm sorry. And so I sold my shares to my girlfriend, and actually we fell out with each other, which is sad because we've been friends for so long. But anyway, it didn't work. And that's when I decided that I would be an interior designer. I didn't know anything about it. I took a short course of how to measure windows and what colours to put with what colours. And I think it was a 2-day course. And then I really had a lot of luck. I got in with a group of people, because interior designing is word of mouth, really.
Yeah.
You can't be taught it. If you can do it, you can do it. But then you can be the best designer in the world. But if nobody wants you, you don't get any work. But I happened to meet someone who said, "Oh, I think you're amazing. You must do my girlfriend's." And then they said, "Oh, could you?" And all of a sudden, I was so busy.
Wow.
I did it at the start. Well, it got so complicated. I did a couple of Arab palaces. Amazing. I did Tom Cruise's penthouse for him. I did all the Merck family. I don't really know Merck Pharmaceuticals. I did their houses for them.
Wow.
The stories that go with them. I always say that I sat on the bed with Tom Cruise, not in bed.
I get it.
On bed.
I get it.
So I've had, that was just amazing. And the problem with interior designing is because if you're an emotional person like I am, I would begin to believe that house was mine, because my heart would go. It shouldn't matter me saying pink wall and some cushions. And I'd pull down houses and put them up again, and restore barns and turn them into swimming pool areas and so on. I did one for a big, very important sheikh in last year, and I dug down three floors below the pavement, and had I had swimming pool on one lot, and I began to think it was my place, and then I had to hand back the keys at the end, and I always ended up by crying because they said, "Oh, can we have the keys back?" And I go, "Oh yes," they'll have to walk away and go to my boring old place, leaving this amazing place. Anyway, so yes, I'm too emotional for these things, really. But now I'm older, and I've started something. I've started a new campaign, which is very important to me, which I'm calling Old Lives Matter. Because we've got Black Lives Matter. You're not allowed to say black, not allowed to say fat, you're not allowed to, but you're allowed to say old. I'm fed up with people say, "Oh, that old woman, oh, Wendy, oh, she's old, oh, that old." No, I am old. I can't help that.
Great.
but it's important to me, that I'm also a person. So I'm pushing that at the moment. That's my latest scheme, anyway.
That's a beautiful campaign, really. I think it's a beautiful one.
I've got it in my window. It says "Old Lives Matter," which they do. You'd be surprised how badly people are being treated here. Among them in a care home. Oh, don't want to. Whereas in the past, an older person was revered, and they'd be, and they'd be moved into the other room, and they help with the children. Now, no. Oh, well, I'll put her in an old people's home. Old people's home. So I've got my campaign, is what I'm doing now.
That's great. That's great. Let me just ask you, in the past, how much would you sell? How much would you sell your most expensive garment?
I think was most probably Julie Christie's gold lame dress that she won at Oscar in. And I think in those days it was something like £120, but it was like huge amount of money in those days.
Now.
You know,
Wow.
now.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it was a lot of money because usually my dresses, which would be silk or whatever, would be something like £15. I don't know what that is. Maybe even if you called it $15, then when I look at the prices now, I think, my goodness, how could things have been so cheap? But of course,
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Credit. How many books have you put together so far?
9. I've got 9. Yes.
Wow.
Yes. I've done a recipe book, which I've done like recipe cards that you could, how to make curtains. And I've done a sketchbook of blinds, and then I've done one of accessories. My most famous ones are the curtain sketchbooks, and that's, as I say, they teach all the students. All the colleges buy them, so that they're just. In fact, I just have to say my name, Wendy Baker, when I'm in any sort of way where they're talking about decor, and they go, "Not Wendy Baker, the sketchbooks," and I go, "Yes," and they go, "Oh, so lovely to meet you," and I go, "Oh, really?" I don't think of it like that, but I think it was a lucky stroke. I had a most wonderful person called Christine Carrieri. She did all my sketching for me. I used to do awful shapes and flat things, and I'd say like this, and then she'd go, "Bloody hell, I can't do that." And then she'd go, "Few swear words, and she'd go, "Oh, ridiculous," bang the phone down. I go, "Oh, now what?" And then 2 days later, it comes through the most wonderful sketches.
Wow.
The sketches got such a great sense of humor. Unfortunately, she died a couple of years ago, and I think she just fell off her perch one day. She took a glass of wine and was sitting there, had a heart attack, and that was it. We had a great love relationship. I loved her to bits. We argued a huge amount, but in the end, we were doing the books. I was living in France and she was living in Spain, so we were shouting down the phone to each other. "No, not that way. No, don't be stupid." So every sketch in the books means something to me because I can remember the hell I went through to get her to do it how I wanted it.
Wow. So No Darling is your new book, is it? No Darling, it's called Bad Organization.
Now, let me tell you, it's very important that the title, because I have a girlfriend who gets on my nerves, but I love her dearly. And she called me up one day and she said, she talked like this, "Darling, would you like to go to lunch with me at the Ivy today?" And I said, because I talk the same when I'm speaking to her, "No, darling, I can't." She said, "Why not?" And I said, "It's called working for a living." And she said, "No, darling, it's called bad organization," and put the phone down. That's why the book is called No Darling, Bad Organization. And I am badly organized, I think. I mean, I am not, but I am. I get everything a bit wrong. I think I'm dyslexic or something. I don't know, but I try hard, and I'm succeeding, and
you are.
I'm hoping to live to about 120, so I'll be all right in the end.
Great. You look really strong and beautiful at your age, really, and it looks like everything you've tried your hands on. Sure, everything you've tried your hands on has been so successful. From your story, from the fashion, the time you were doing the fashion to the time you did your interior design, and now with your books. Every time you've been scaling up with whatever you do, and that is really
impressive. You can do anything. If you set your heart to it, you can do it. You can do it if you've got the will. I mean, some people can't, But so some people are saying now, "Oh, the pandemic, what am I going to do all day?" And I go, "For goodness sake, there's so much to do." I've learned to do candle making. Wow. I don't know why. I'm learning Italian at the moment. I'm working my guts out promoting the book. But why are people just sitting saying, "Oh, I'm depressed"? I don't understand. But there
exactly.
Everyone's different.
True. You have to set your heart to it, really. You have to, and then you'll be able to do. That's so true.
I'd love to hear your story. We don't have time now, but I'd love to hear your story.
I have beautiful stories. We actually started podcast in the first lockdown. And
Yes.
I thought that this is a time that people would like to hear words of encouragement and words of inspiration like yours, so that they would know that they can't just let everything down. Things are changing, change with it. You get it, and all of that.
I don't understand how people they just sit there, just sitting there watching television and just, I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, well.
I'm with you, Wendy. I'm with you, Wendy.
Yes.
Can you give us a synopsis of your book?
Yeah, well, it's my life story. It starts off with a scared little girl with a stutter, with no friends, because nobody wants a school friend with a stutter. And I found out if I was really naughty, I made friends. So I became a naughty girl and was always in trouble. And that's it, really. I went to college and learned how to shorthand type, which I never use. But I learned how to do business. And I also ended up by working with Arbuthnot's, which is a big merchant bank. I mean, I couldn't even add up 1 and 1. I made 5. I couldn't add up even. But Arbuthnot's phoned me up one day and said, "We don't understand the rag trade. Can you help us out?" And so I used to sit at the board, at the table in board meetings, telling all these bankers what to do. I mean, yes. And so yes, it's been a hard uphill struggle, but I can't remember what the question was now. Sorry.
About your book, your synopsis of synopsis.
My book. Well, it's the story of virtually I've been telling you. It's through everything from the rag trade through to Secrets, which was the name of the salon. A bit about my love life. I not a lot. I have a big regret of my lovely Italian that I didn't marry. I have a wonderful daughter. But I never married. I didn't find the right person. If I hadn't married my Italian, I waited, and I've still got the back gate open. I'm still waiting for Prince Charming to come. I think he might come, but he's got to take me as I am now.
Do you think it's because you got busy with business? That was why you didn't get married, or?
Yeah. Yes, it's all I had really, because from being a stuttery child, I was adopted by a stepfather. I felt as if I'd been given away, and I felt always as if I had to prove that I was somebody. So I spent my entire life trying to make my mother happy to have me. And it seems silly now, and it sounds silly, I suppose. But that's how I felt. I was always trying to prove myself. And I never thought that a piece of paper would buy me. I'd love to have had a white wedding. I'd rather have the wedding. I don't get married, but perhaps I'll have a wedding without getting married.
Oh, that's not possible, is it?
A virtual wedding. Yes. No. Maybe somebody will come, but I think it's too late now. I've enjoyed. I was living with my partner for 50 years, and he died last year. I feel very relieved because he had Alzheimer's, and life was horrendous. And I wanted to kill myself. I didn't. It was awful. And now he's not around. I miss him, and I sleep on the right-hand side of the bed. I never sleep on his side.
Yeah.
Silly. It's yes, life's not the same. He was a very, very good-looking guy, and we had great adventures together. But this awful disease took him, and I try not to remember that part.
Yeah. What was your experience like partying with Princess Margaret?
Oh, that was always difficult because she was very spoiled. She always liked to be. She was late for everything. So we'd be told from the palace, be at the club, generally the 400 Club, be there at 8 o'clock or something. So we'd all get there, and about 9:30 she'd arrive, and we couldn't sit down to eat till she came. Then she wouldn't sit down. She'd always have her long cigarette holder. And somebody would light a cigarette, and she'd stand there. Meanwhile, we're still standing, and then somebody would push a chair under her legs to make her sit down, and then we could all sit down. And I remember she had a boyfriend called Billy Wallace. It was a bit of a chimneyless wonder, we used to call him. But I think he quite fancied me, and he kept coming and chatting to me, and I could see her, virtually feel her eyes in my back, sort of going, leave him alone. So I don't think she liked me very much. Well, you know, we didn't have a lot in common, but
Were you in her circle of friends?
we weren't. No, she had a sort of way with her. I think the sad thing is that, you know, she was the second born. You know, she should have married Townsend, but she didn't, and she chose the title and everything, and she didn't find happiness. She found quite a lot on Mustique. I think she had a good life there, but she was very hung up about sex. Her sex life was very mixed up, and you know, so I think she was an unhappy woman. Last time I saw her was actually at Chelsea Harbour, where she'd burned her legs, and she was in a wheelchair, and that was the last time. She died fairly shortly after that, and she just said hi to me, and I don't think she really remembered who I was really, but yes. But I think the nicest royal people that I've met was the Duke and Duchess of Windsor, who obviously would have been King of England, and he gave it all up for Wallis Simpson, and she was horrible. So it was horrible to everybody. But he was so sweet. All he cared about was gardening. You know, you see, King of England could have been. All he kept on talking about was whether he should put his bulbs in or whether he should put. So he was lovely talking to him. But yeah.
So how is the link with you and the royal family? Are you just a friend, or are you a long distant relative to them?
No. I'm nothing like that. I'm just Wendy. I'm just Wendy. I'm nobody. I just because I made the clothes for so many important people, and because of because there was something we had in England, we don't have in America, called debutantes, that all the debutantes had connections to the royal family. And when they had the coming out ball, they always had a coming out ball. And so they'd say at the Grosvenor House, the lady so-and-so and so-and-so is having a coming out ball. Oh, Harriet, you will be there, won't you? You will come. Okay. And so I used to go to all these amazing balls and dance away and everything. But no, I was absolutely nobody. I don't have any royal links, most certainly not. I think the nearest is that my grandmother was a court dressmaker. That's about as near as it got, which is why I most probably ended up in the rag trade. I don't know, but yes, no. But it was my connections, and I'm good at connections. I can remember there was somebody very, very rich. Well, in Rome, when I was working in Rome, they were making a film which now has been remade, but it was called Ben-Hur, and it was the original Ben-Hur with Charlton Heston, Harry Belafonte, all those people, and I parted with them and made so many connections with that. And Stephen Ward, that's another Profumo case, which you don't know about Profumo case, do you?
No.
Well, it was a big scandal, but I was involved in that. Thank God my mother told me to come home and I didn't stay the night. Otherwise, I might be in jail to this day. But it's an awful lot in my book. So it's a lot of stories. Three mafia murders, as I say, which are very interesting, and they've not been solved. I sort of have an idea why they happened, but the mafia were very in the 60s. There was a lot of it around the Italian restaurants. The Italian restaurants in London were all owned by mafia generally, and there's a lot of nasty things going on. We had two bodies put into the flyover in Chiswick. So they had great big steel girders with concrete and everything, and we'd say, got two bodies in that one and one in that one. And I don't know whether it was true, but that's how the 60s was. It was a bit grim, but
Yeah. How did you end up with John Lennon's glasses?
Well, that was silly, but we went to the very, very famous club. The most famous club in London during that time was called the Ad Lib, and you had to be someone special to be able to even to go there.
Okay.
And luckily I was special, I suppose, at the time.
Yeah.
And I had a boyfriend who was also special, and he was friends of someone called Vidal Sassoon, which you might know, the hairdresser.
Yes.
And there were three boys from the East End, Eddie, Vidal, and Gerald, and they came and they became the thing. The place to have your hair done was there, and I was going out with Vidal and Eddie, we were dancing one night, and I was sitting beside Ringo at the time, and he was going out with someone called Maureen. I think he married Maureen. I can't remember. Anyway, all of a sudden, someone said, "Let's do the conga." Not the sort of thing we would normally do at the ad lib, but we all jumped up and we all had too much to drink, and so we all hung on to each other. And someone said from behind, they said to me, "Pinch my bottom." And they said, "Pass it on." So I did pass it on, and it was John Lennon's bottom. And he turned around, he said, "More, more, more." So I went round the club pinching John Lennon's bottom until we got back to where we were all sitting, and we collapsed and hysterical laughter. And then and John said, "Are you hungry?" And I said, "Oh, I'm starving." And he said, "Grab the menu." And I knew what it was. It was only hamburgers that they sold there, but I couldn't read the small print. So he said, "Oh, have my glasses." And because it was a very dark club, because people like Judy Garland were there, and that's why it was such a dark club, because so that nobody wanted
you don't see anybody. Yeah.
And so I couldn't see. Anyway, so he lent me glasses, and then he disappeared. And I said to Ringo, "Oh, can you give these to John?" He said, "Oh, he's gone now. He's got lots of pairs. Don't hang on to them."
Oh.
So I hung on to them. They've been in my knicker drawer now, or they were in my knicker drawer for 30 years.
Wow.
I always knew they were there, and I don't know why I kept them there. I just knew they were John's, and it meant a lot to me, the life that I was having at the time. And then about 18 months ago, I thought, this is silly. And someone approached me and said, "Have you got all the membership things for the ad lib and the menus?" And I said, "Well, I've obviously got John's glasses, and I've got everybody's signatures and so forth." And I said, "But I don't want to really lose them." Anyway, they said, "Well," they said at the time 20,000, and then finally I think I got 10 or 12,000.
Wow.
Yeah, but there's a big story around that, which is too long to tell you. But yeah. So, but I was sad. I sort of look in my knicker drawer and go, "Oh, there's a gap there."
Yeah.
But silly. I don't know why I was holding on to them. But there we are.
So your book is up for sale, is it? The book.
My book is what?
Is up for sale. Is it on Amazon?
It's on Amazon, and there's an ebook as well. But the trouble is that I finished it when the days that we went into lockdown in England. I finished the book, and all the book, the distributors that sell the books are all closed, and the only place you can buy it is from me. So you have to buy it from me, which is from www.shoestringbooks.co.uk, and you get a signed copy.
Great.
Or you can buy it from Amazon, and I've also signed a lot for Amazon, so you can buy it from Amazon, signed copy, and you can buy the ebook from Amazon.
What will be your final words of advice to our listeners? Your final word of advice to our listeners?
Well, I think you've got to follow your heart. When you fall in love, bloody well marry him. Why didn't I do that? And just get on with your life. Stop moaning about everything all the time. Just say, "I want to do that. I can do that," and do it. And if you can't do it, it's not the end of the world. It's just people push themselves so much. I mean, everybody's going to end up. One of the things I said in my podcast is my blog is it's all very well seeing people bent over saying they're old, but it's all these young people with their bloody earphones. All they do is keep looking at their phones all the time. I don't understand how they don't communicate anymore. Somebody keep ponging me or pinging me or whatever it is. Pinging, I don't want that. I want someone to call and say, "Hi, Wendy, how are you doing? You lonely? Are you, but no, I go, "Are you all right?" "I'm sorry." Well, if you can't be bothered to phone me, don't bother. I get very rude. Don't bother.
I get it.
I don't conform very easily.
Yeah. I get it.
It's lovely to meet you. I sort of haven't met you, but it's lovely to talk to you.
It's beautiful having you on Podcast with Sheila. And I think your story today is so impressive. If for nothing at all, the one thing I got out of your story is you have worked your way through it. And in all of it, you have aimed at being successful. And that was exactly what you got in the end. And I think that is a beautiful message you're going to leave out there with our listeners. And it was great having you on Podcast with Sheila, really. Listening in, this is season 2, episode 7 of our podcast series, where we've been bringing your way seasoned guests with inspiring life stories to share with us. Do not miss out on all these lovely experiences. Subscribe and be notified when a new episode is released. We have a video presentation of this show on our YouTube channel. If you would like to see us in pictures, just search for Podcast with Sheila and you would find us. On this note, we would like to say a massive thank you to all our listeners from the 18 countries around the world. This show continues to grow stronger and stronger because of your support. Podcast with Sheila is aired on 8 listening platforms: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, and YouTube. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this episode if you were inspired by it. Until we meet again in a fortnight, have a brilliant week.